My name is Karen Mooney and I'm a parent program facilitator with Barnardos, and I am your host for this evening's webinar. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us. This is the 7th webinar that we are delivering on behalf of the ETB Schools National Parents Association. This is a standalone one-off event which follows on from a series of 6 webinars, each of which focused on some of the common challenges and issues that are faced by teenagers today. If you've joined us for some of those webinars, for some of the previous webinars, we're delighted to have you back. But also, if this is your first time joining us, you are extremely welcome as well. Barnardos would like to extend thanks to the ETB Schools National Parents Association, particularly David O'Gorman and Anne-Marie Roach and their team, for placing their trust in us to deliver this series of webinars along with the webinar this evening, all of which aim to empower and support parents as they navigate their way through some of the challenges of parenting a teenager. So you are going to be with me for maybe about 45 minutes this evening, 45 to 50 minutes, and we are focusing on the topic of parental self-care. So our title for this evening is Supporting Parents to Become Aware of Their Own Needs and Look After Their Own Well-Being. So the aim of the webinar is to support you, parents and guardians, to recognise your own self-care needs as you navigate your way through parenting a teenager, whether you're just embarking on that journey or whether you're already way into it. Adolescence can be a challenging time for both young people and their parents. It's a time when teenagers are going through significant developmental changes. They're striving to become more independent from their parents, and they're trying to establish closer connections to their peers. So this webinar will help you, parents and guardians, to recognise the need to take an active role in caring for yourselves, so that you can adapt to these various different changes, maintain a strong parent-child relationship, recover from any setbacks and bumps along the way, and handle the challenges and stresses that come with it. So there's a couple of topics or a couple of points that we're going to go through over the next 45 minutes or so. So we're going to start by just talking really briefly about some of the issues that teenagers are faced with. And then we're going to, I suppose, flip the webinar and focus pretty much entirely on you as parents and how you can mind yourself. So we're going to talk about the impact then of those issues that teenagers face, the impact of that on you as parents, your role and responsibilities. Then we're going to talk about self-care. So what is it? What does it actually mean in real terms? We're going to talk a little bit about connection and a little bit about self-compassion. And then we're going to go through just some key things that might be really, really helpful for parents to remember, along with some further supports before we finish. So just to start us off, I suppose, so adolescence is a period of transition between childhood and adulthood. It includes some really big changes, so to the body and to the way a young person relates to their world. So there are many physical, sexual, cognitive, social and emotional changes that happen during this time can bring anticipation and anxiety for both children and their families. So it is without doubt a time of really significant change, and these changes can bring new challenges, new stresses, new worries for parents. Your relationship with your young person changes as they become a teenager. They need you in a different way. How they interact with you is different to how they interact with you when they are a small child. And this can be really hard for parents. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this and how we manage that. So I mentioned already that we have covered a number of webinars already on behalf of the ETB Schools National Parents Association, and each of those webinars covered a different topic, I suppose, that is related to the issues that young people face. We know that the teenage years are becoming increasingly complex. Our teenagers face many challenges and obstacles as they navigate their way through this developmental stage. It's not easy for them. So some of the topics that we have covered and discussed at length before, and some other ones. So exposure to substances and risky behaviour, exams and school difficulties, and that's obviously a big one at the minute because we know lots of students are facing into exam time. So it can be, for some students, they will find that they breeze through it, and for other students, it can be a real tough time for them. this online world and social media. So that can be a real challenge for children and young people to navigate their way through and get to grips with. Mental health and emotional well-being is obviously really, really important. Establishing their identity. So who are they? What do they represent? How do they look? Where do they fit in? Belonging, fitting in, peer relationships. It's a huge part of this adolescence phase. So, you know, the peer group becomes really, really important. It becomes a really big feature in their life, and they're trying to fit into that and manage that. And separation and loss. So whether that's parental separation, whether that's loss of a loved one, whether that's loss of a pet, maybe that's transitioning from primary to secondary school, moving house, you know, that can be a vast array of different things. So this is just to name a few. There's obviously lots of other challenges that teenagers can face, but these are some of the main ones that we will come across when we're working with children and families. So these can obviously all be really, really challenging. But parents having an understanding of teenage development and having an understanding of these issues goes a really long way to parents coping with the ups and downs of parenting. So how can, I suppose, these issues impact on parents then? So we know parenting is a job for life, and one which, to do it well, it requires us to be vigilant, it requires us to be tuned in. We're constantly adapting and changing and moving. We're watching, we're listening, we're observing. And as our children become older, we're not just, I suppose, tuning in and observing them. We're also looking at the actions of those around them. So we're paying more attention to their peers as they become a bigger feature in their life, their siblings, their school friends, people that they're hanging out with in their community, their teammates, all of those. So we're extremely vigilant and paying attention to all of that. So it is inevitable that if our teenagers or young people are going through any of the challenges or difficulties that we've just mentioned, that it's going to impact on us as their parents. And realistically, we can end up on a massive emotional roller coaster. So we can be excited for them, we can be tired and exhausted, worried and concerned, stressed, frustrated. We can be confused, we can be really challenged, we don't know what they need, how to help them. We can also be really optimistic and hopeful, things can be going really well for them. We're hopeful of our new changing relationship with them and how we're connecting with them, joyous and happy for them. We can also feel really anxious about what's going on for them or the challenges that they have coming up. We can be really, really proud, sad, upset, worried, overwhelmed, and annoyed. And again, that is just to name a few of the different feelings and emotions that a parent can go through on a daily, weekly, monthly basis as we are navigating our way through all of these challenges. So needless to say, you know, when we are experiencing all of these big emotions, that there is absolutely an importance on minding ourselves as we do that. So we know that we have many roles and responsibilities as a parent. We know that parenting is an ever-changing, demanding, always-on role. And as a parent, we have so many responsibilities. I'm just going to put a few of them up here just to get us thinking. So nurturer, driver, taxi. How many parents of teenagers do you know who refer to themselves as a taxi driver? A schedule keeper, so you've training on this night, you have to bring your gear on this day, you're meeting such a body on this day. Their supporter, you're their cheerleader, whether that's at a match, whether that's at a music recital, whether that's at a club event. You're their confidant, so sharing things with you, you know, minding them, holding on to those secrets. You're a caregiver, you're a teacher, you're still their greatest role model. You're the provider, whether that's, you know, a roof over their head, whether that's security, stability, financially. Your supervisor, so supervising them, knowing where they are, keeping them safe, and nurturer as well. And again, that list is not exclusive. So I'm sure, you know, there's loads of other things that you could think of to add in there as well. But that is just to give us a bit of an idea of the many different responsibilities that we're trying to maintain in this role of parent. But alongside that, we also have other roles. So we're the parents of a teenager, and quite possibly the parent of children of other ages within our family as well. But we're also fulfilling many different roles and wearing many other different hats as well. And all of these other roles need our attention, our focus, our energy, none of which are in endless supply. So maybe we're a homemaker, so our house still has to run, whether that's dinner on the table, laundry to be done, grass to be cut, house to be cleaned, whatever it might be. You're also a spouse or a partner, maybe you're a friend, maybe you're a community member, so maybe you're involved in something, whether it's your local club or community group. Maybe you're an employee, a professional, a student. You might be a work colleague, you're maybe a son or a daughter, a sibling, a family member, an aunt, an uncle, a neighbor. The list goes on and on. So alongside our previous slide of all the endless responsibilities that we have as a parent, we also then have all of these other roles that we fulfill outside of that. We're not just a parent, we are all of these other things as well that are all equally valuable and important to us. And sometimes we can lose sight of that when we are so consumed by the role of parenting. And it's about remembering that, we're allowed to be all of these other things as well, and that these are important. But in order to be able to fulfill those as well, we need energy to do that. So if we need this energy to do those things, how do we get it? So what is this idea of self-care that we're talking about? So self-care is not synonymous with self-indulgence or being selfish. I think this is so important to remember. Self-care means taking care of yourself so that you can be healthy, you can be well, you can do your job, you can help and care for others, and you can do all of the things you need to and want to accomplish in a day. So it's not self-indulgent or being selfish. Self-care for some people can feel selfish, it can feel like it's self-serving. However, it is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself and for those around you. It's often associated with self-indulgence, and I think marketing has a lot to answer for in that regard. So we see all of these, pamper days and spa days and trips and stuff, all marketed now as self-care. So, it's associated with self-indulgence, treating yourself, doing things, pampering yourself with luxuries that maybe you wouldn't usually. But what we need to remember is, whilst some of these things are lovely and thoroughly enjoyable, and it's nice to get the opportunity to do them, these types of care are often short-term and superficial. So they're only kind of addressing the surface layer. True self-care addresses kind of the underlying stressors and the responses that we have going on. It's an activity that brings you joy, fulfillment, and self-confidence. It might be an activity like reading a book, breathing exercises, practicing mindfulness, taking a shower, something very, very simple. It's not a big marketed package. And by shifting the lens, so by changing our perception and changing our mindset, our understanding of what self-care means, we can begin to remove the guilt and the stigma of prioritizing your well-being. So when we shift the lens of our understanding of what self-care means, we can drop out this idea that it's selfish or self-indulgent and actually change our mindset to think about it as something that is exceptionally important to allow us to be healthy, be well, do our job, and do all of the things, all of the roles and responsibilities that we just spoke about. It allows us to be able to do that. But how do we figure out what we as parents need? And that can be the challenge, because we're so busy kind of, meeting all of the needs of the children, of our children, fulfilling all of our roles and responsibilities, working, looking after the home, all of those things, that we don't actually really tune in and recognize what it is we need. So first and foremost, we need to let go of this misguided notion that being a good parent is being available to our children's every single moment of every single day, that we're at their beck and call at every moment. And so we need to let go of that misguided notion that that is, a good parent, or that is what parenting is. We don't need to constantly be able to make the perfect parenting decision, and we don't need to be available at every moment. So when we do that, when we let go of that notion and that idea, it allows us to refocus our attention on the other half of the parent-child relationship, which is us as parents. So in a parent-child relationship, there is two halves. And if we become a martyr to one half and are only concerned about the needs of one half, then the balance is completely off and it doesn't work. So in order for there to be balance and for that parent-child relationship to work, we need to give attention to both sides. So that includes looking at ourselves. So it allows us then to take space to check in with our own experiences, get a sense of how we're doing and what we really need to balance that scales a little bit. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. There never has been, there never will be. That is not what we're aiming for. But to be the best parent that you can be, you do need to take good care of yourself. This means recognizing your own feelings and recognizing the time that you need to restore your emotional and physical balance. So recognizing the time that you need to look at the other half of the parent-child relationship and focus on yourself. We cannot care for our children unless we take time to recharge our own batteries. And we know that everybody has a different recharge mechanism, and it's about finding what works for you and really prioritizing the time to do that. So what can be helpful is thinking about self-care as a parenting skill. So maybe it's a skill that we haven't mastered yet. Maybe it's a skill that maybe we need to put a little bit of time and effort into. So the same way as we work on all the other areas of our parenting, maybe this is one that we need to focus on a little bit. So replenishing your own fuel, replenishing your own emotional fuel is an essential parenting skill because our responsibility is so big. We are our child's emotional regulator. And if we're not replenishing our emotional fuel, then we're not available to them. So it's like having a car and putting, only a small bit of petrol in, or not putting any petrol at all in, and we're expecting it to go. It's not going to happen. So if we're not putting any fuel into ourselves, if we're not putting any focus or attention on our own needs and meeting our own needs and recharging our own batteries, we don't have anything to give to the other half of our parent-child relationship. And we certainly don't have anything to give in all of those other roles and responsibilities that we want to fulfill. Self-care as a parent of a teenager might be different to self-care that you needed when they were small or when they were little. And that's something interesting that came up, I suppose, that an awful lot of information that's out there is focused on, I suppose, new parents or parents of small children and minding themselves. So you might need to think outside the box a little bit in relation to what is it that you actually need as the parent of a teenager. And in order to help us do that this evening, I just have this little infographic, I suppose, that might be helpful with that. So it gives us, I suppose, the dimensions of health. And this goes back to this idea of balance again. So how do we balance the whole picture, I suppose? So like I said already, everybody has a different recharge mechanism. Everybody has something different that works for them. So it's about finding what works for you and then prioritizing that. But it's so important to keep it simple and keep it attainable. So again, a lot of marketing has gone into this idea of self-care and that, it now has to be, it's not taken 15 minutes to go have a shower. Now it needs to be a lavender bath with bath bombs and, sprigs of lavender and candles lighting and music playing and dimmed lighting. And, but it's about figuring out what is actually achievable for me that doesn't feel like an extra chore, it doesn't feel like an extra stressor, it doesn't feel like another thing on my to-do list. So in relation to physical health, then it's really about taking it back to the basics. So the first things in order to look after our physical health is our nutrition. So we need good fuel, we need good nutrition in order for our bodies to function. We need good quality sleep and enough sleep. And that can certainly be hard, particularly if maybe there's small kids in your house. But it's about thinking about how I can maximize my sleep. So maybe there's one night a week where it's, okay, I'm going to bed when the kids are going to bed. The laundry and the dishes and the upside down kitchen can wait until the morning. But on this one night, my bedtime is earlier. Or maybe it is that, I realize that I'm really, really tired this week. So I'm going to make a conscious effort that the phone is going off a half an hour earlier so that I can wind down earlier. So just thinking about small ways that you can maximize on sleep. Exercise is so important. So just movement in your day. That's a little bit easier now, I suppose, with the evenings being brighter. Doesn't mean you have to have a gym membership or be signed up to 12 weeks of classes. Maybe it's just simply, getting out for a walk around the garden or getting out while the kids are on their bike, walking the dog. It can be something really, really simple. 10 minutes, 15 minutes in your day, but just getting movement into your day and into your body. In relation to your emotional or mental well-being then, so it's doing something that you enjoy. So what fulfills you? What puts a smile on your face? Sometimes we feel like we have to be doing things or we have to be doing certain things, but it's basically, what do I enjoy? What brings me joy? What is going to make me feel good? Be mindful, tune into yourself. So recognize how you are, recognize what you're feeling, recognize what you need, and give yourself permission to take that time to figure that out, especially if it's something that we're not in the habit of doing. It can be hard to figure out what it is we need. And have self-compassion and forgiveness. So it's back to this idea that actually there is no such thing as a perfect parent. So if we've had a day or if we've had a moment where, it hasn't been our finest moment, or we've said something or lost the cool a little bit or raised our voices and we really didn't want to, start with a little bit of self-compassion for yourself, recognizing that maybe you're very tired or stressed, forgiving yourself for that, and apologizing if you need to. If you have maybe raised your voice and you didn't want to, it's going to your young person and saying, look, I lost my cool there and I raised my voice and I really didn't want to. I'm quite tired, so I'm going to just spend a little bit of time resting this evening because I don't want to be shouting and I'd like to be a little bit more patient. That's a massive life skill that we're teaching our teenager, but it's also you not giving out to yourself or beating yourself up over, what has happened. So a little bit of self-compassion and a little bit of forgiveness. Socially then, so staying connected to family and friends. That can be hard to fit in, but finding opportunities where we can. Doesn't necessarily have to be face-to-face. Maybe it's by phone or a chat. Maybe it's taken 5 minutes to reply to some of those messages that we haven't gotten to. But connection is so important. So maybe that's other parent friends, maybe that's old school friends, maybe that's extended family members, maybe it's someone in your local group, whoever it might be. If you're feeling a bit disconnected, there's always opportunities to join groups, community organizations, volunteer, whatever it might be, to broaden, I suppose, your horizons and meet new people. And don't forget to celebrate traditions, cultures, norms, things that are important to you, to your family, that fulfill that social need as well. And spiritually then, so our final quadrant then is making sure that we do also find quiet time or relaxation time. Societally, I suppose we have this idea of the importance of being busy and always being on the go, and that makes us productive and that makes us good parents and that makes us, whatever. But there is so much value in taking quiet time. And we should be encouraging with our kids as well, that they find quiet time as well. Whether that is just to hang out at home, chill out in their bedroom, maybe there's one evening in the week that is kept as kind of sacred, where there is no activities booked in on that evening, that it's home from school, dinner and homework, and that's it. There's nothing else in, where we can all just chill and unwind a little bit, maybe have a little bit of family time, TV time, whatever. But making sure that there is priority given to that as well. Practice, whether it's faith, religion, meditation, whatever it is that grounds you spiritually, and staying true to your beliefs and your morals. So if there's things happening or stuff going on that doesn't fit, you know, being okay with maybe doing things differently or trying new things or changing things, but staying true to who you are. So that gives us kind of a holistic picture. And there might be times where, you know, maybe in one of these quadrants we're managing really well, but maybe in another we're not managing so well. So it's about being mindful of the balance. And if it feels like one of them is not doing so well, that you're able to come back and think about, okay, what can I do to fit in there? The work we need to do on and for ourselves is a necessary and sometimes even more necessary than the care we provide for our children. It is quite simply not possible to keep our children safe and to stay engaged in the work of seeing, soothing and supporting them if we're not doing it for ourselves. So it is not possible for us to be the best parent we can be if we are not taking care of ourselves. Self-care, like I said, it might be different to what you needed when they were small, but it is still as important. Okay, so we have some simple self-care tips for you to take away with you this evening. So the first one is getting things done. So getting things done. So making a to-do list can be really, really helpful. So it allows you to make things more manageable. It allows you to identify, okay, what are the things that are urgent that I maybe do need to get done and ticked off? And what are the things that are actually able to wait? It puts you in control. Instead of having everything floating around in your head of all the things you need to get done, they're down on paper and you're able to tick them off. So getting things done, so making your to-do list and asking for help. So reaching out if you need support with something, if you need help with something, that's really, really helpful and important too. Looking after yourself, so like we just talked a little bit, so maintaining your energy level, so the physical exercise, noticing what lifts your mood, noticing what makes you feel better in yourself. We talked about sleep, because it's so good for your mental health and it's also a really good self-care tool. Putting yourself first, so this is what we're really, really emphasizing. So giving yourself permission to take time, even if it's 10 minutes, and being kind to yourself while you do that. So just maybe check that internal dialogue that's going on. Go back to what we talked about, I suppose, the mindset piece of, you know, self-indulgence and selfish and all of those things, and actually coming away from that and changing that dialogue that you have in relation to taking time and the importance of self-care for you, and it being a parenting skill that you do need to give time and attention to. So it's about thinking, you know, a little bit more like, how would I speak to a friend about this if you're finding that your internal dialogue is a little bit negative and a little bit critical? What would I say to a friend if they, you know, maybe weren't prioritizing themselves or weren't taking any time for themselves? What would I suggest to them? Because that's how you want to be speaking to yourself as well. Staying connected, so we already talked about that. So check in with friends, parents, and connect with a circle of parents if you can. If you find that things are challenging with your teenager, you can guarantee that other parents of teenagers are going through the same thing, or something similar, and may have advice or suggestions, or even just, you know, a shared space where you can offload a bit and share a bit and vent a bit, and have a bit of a give out, and maybe come up with some thoughts and ideas. So staying connected, and remembering as well that it's okay to say no. That goes back to this idea of rest and relaxation. So, you know, remembering that actually you can have boundaries, and if you're feeling under pressure and too stretched, you know, it's okay to say no to, whether that's a commitment to go to something, or helping someone else out, or doing something else. It is okay to say no as well. And free time, back to that. And that might mean something like time away from social media, time away from screens, time away from devices. It might mean how much time you're spending on social media, or it might be more to do with the content of what you're absorbing from social media. So if you're taking in content that makes you feel not good enough, or doesn't make you feel good, or makes you feel bad about yourself as a parent or as an individual, then that's content that you don't need to have in your life. So it's about freeing up your space, freeing up your time, freeing up your social media. And giving the attention and time then to your passions and what you do enjoy and what you know is fulfilling for you instead. So we all have practices, activities, or rituals that we know restore us. So think about the things that you do that make your spirit happy, that make you feel connected to yourself, and that kind of, when you do them, it kind of feels like the stress evaporates and it brings a sense of calm. So think about those things and identify what those things are. It doesn't mean that maybe the hard stuff is gone or has disappeared, but for a period of time, you're able to just leave it down and refuel yourself and connect back with yourself so that you're in a better position to come back to it later. It doesn't necessarily have to be things that better yourself. So it doesn't have to be learning something new or learning a new language or doing a new course or learning a new skill. It doesn't have to be that. Often self-care is something that we're learning or improving or developing, but it should be things that enable you to be your best version of yourself and your happiest version of yourself. Because self-care is when you, at your core, feel nurtured and cared for. And it might be different at different times, and that's absolutely okay. So what fulfills you now may not be what fulfills you in 6 months' time or a year's time, and that's okay. So they're just some simple self-care tips to keep in mind. I mentioned back in the beginning that I was going to talk very briefly about the idea of self-compassion. And this slide is telling us that self-compassion is self-care. So I already mentioned that as parents, we can sometimes be quite critical of ourselves. We can sometimes have a bit of a negative internal dialogue going on. So this is just a reminder, I suppose, of the importance of self-compassion. You are doing the hardest job that there is, and you are doing a great job at it. And the fact that you're even, that you're here this evening joining this webinar is testament to the great job that you're doing. So self-compassion means understanding that you have a hard situation, and it's finding ways to say kind words to yourself without being overly hard or self-critical. It's being able to find ways to look at the positives of what you provide to yourself and your children. It is truly giving yourself a break, letting go of some of the baggage. So we can be so quick to jump to maybe, something we said that we regret or how we responded to something, when actually there has probably been so many other things in our day that have gone well and that have been good for our teens. But we're focused on this one part that maybe didn't go as well, or we said something that maybe we wish we hadn't said. So it's looking at all of the positives, finding the positives and finding a way to talk kinder to yourself with more self-compassion. So it's remembering that that is a part of your self-care package as well. So connection is key, I suppose, is the message here. So this slide is telling us about the importance of connection, and it's about remembering this, I suppose, when things are a little bit sticky or a little bit messy or not going so well, when we feel like we don't have the energy to focus on all of the other stuff, what is important. So it's thinking about connection as your North Star of parenting. So the practice of staying connected to our children is the North Star of parenting. So the North Star, so it's a way to get back on track with what really matters when we become overly focused on the logistics of raising children or on the countless stresses or preoccupations that clutter our adult minds. So when the work of parenting gets really messy or confusing or painful, and when you are feeling really overwhelmed and stressed, the best shot we have of getting the entire family through it with as little drama and trauma as possible is by staying as connected to each other as you possibly can. So if our connection to our children is strong, if it's strong enough and we keep coming back to that again and again, then very often the rest kind of sorts itself out. So it's about always returning to connection. So if we're having a really tough week and parenting feels really messy, really challenging, and often there is those days or there is those weeks, and we're not sure how to cope, and we're not sure how to manage, and we don't know what to do, and we don't know how to respond, just think of the North Star. Think of connection as your North Star. How can I connect? How can I stay connected to my teenager whilst we're navigating our way through this? We can hold on to the connection and come back to that. We will manage to navigate our way through the rest of it. And often lots of it will sort itself out along the way. It's just keeping that analogy in mind, I suppose, of that connection piece being so, so important. And being gentle enough with yourself to know that at times when it's stressful and overwhelming, connection is enough. If I can manage connection, that's enough in that moment. So what are the benefits? Why are we talking about self-care? Why is it important, and what are the benefits? So the benefits to you as a parent. So if you are paying attention to your own needs and refueling yourself and recharging your batteries, it will reduce your levels of stress and anxiety. You will feel like you're in a better mood. You will automatically become more patient and more tolerant with yourself, with your children, with your other family members, in every situation. You feel happier and more relaxed because you're less stressed, and you're in a better place. It will help improve your focus and productivity. So whether that's at home and getting stuff done, whether that's in work and you're trying to focus on something else, if we have taken time to recharge our own batteries, then we are able to focus on those other roles outside of parenting a little bit better too. It allows you to have clearer decision-making skills. So if we're in one of those tough weeks like we just talked about, and if we don't take any time to mind ourselves, it becomes really difficult to be clear, and it becomes really difficult to make decisions. Clarity is harder to reach, and then we become more stressed, and it becomes a bit of a cycle then, really. Overall, improved feeling of well-being, because we're coping better, we're managing better, we're less stressed, we're sleeping better, we're more productive, we're better focused, we're not as snappy, we're not as impatient. And we become a better listener, and we also become a better role model, because if we're using self-care as our coping strategy, then we are role modeling that for our teenager as well, which is really, really helpful. So they're there's some of the benefits for us as parents, but the reality is there is so many benefits for our teenagers as well. So we become models of what healthy adults look like. So we're role modeling what it is to be a healthy adult with healthy coping skills, and with I suppose the ability to prioritize self-care and look after ourselves. Young people learn those positive coping strategies from their parents, like we talked about back when we were using the circle of responsibilities that parents have, where their teacher and their role model. So they're learning these coping strategies from us as well. Young people talk to adults who are settled and calm. They often withhold information from parents that they think will become overly upset. So if our teenagers or our young people feel that we're already quite stressed, or we're worried, or we're emotional, and if they have something going on, they may not feel like they can come and share that with us because they don't want to overburden us, or they don't want to make us more upset or more worried. Whereas if we're minding ourselves and we're settled and calm, then we become that calm for them, so that they can come with the challenges and the difficulties and the chaos and the drama and share that with us without worrying. Adolescents do care deeply about the well-being of their parents, and they feel more secure when they know that we are okay. So if teenagers know that we are okay, they feel secure, and it gives them stability and safety, and that allows them then to be themselves. It allows them to explore their world. It allows them to move through this developmental stage and experiment and, be with their peers without having the worry of, is my mum okay? Is my dad okay? Is my guardian okay? And adolescents whose parents live meaningful lives look forward to growing up. So it's about us, I suppose, providing that picture that, adulthood is something to look forward to as they move into that age category. So there is lots of benefits for us as parents, but there is also lots of benefits for your teenagers as well. And for some parents who struggle with placing importance on it, sometimes it can be helpful to look at it this way as well. You know, well, actually, if I'm doing it, it benefits them too. So caring for yourself with the same faithfulness with which you care about your children is anything but a selfish act. It is actually a really strategic act of good parenting. So it's back to that idea of it being a really good and useful parenting skill. So the best way to help your teenagers grow into confident adults with high self-esteem is for you to model this. That is, to take steps to value, love, and prioritize yourself. So it's back to that idea of you being their greatest role model, and we can role model caring for ourselves and healthy coping strategies by prioritizing self-care. But there are some things that I want you to remember, and this goes back to, I suppose, us not being so critical of ourselves, us not being so hard on ourselves, checking our internal dialogue. So just some things that are helpful for parents to just remind themselves of every now and again. Firstly, every parent, every single parent feels like they're messing up every now and then. So you're not alone in that. You are learning and growing right alongside your teenager. They are not perfect, and neither are you. So becoming an adolescent is a new journey for them. Them becoming an adolescent is also a new journey for you. You might have done it with another teenager already, but they are unique and individual. So their experience of becoming a teenager is unique and individual. So you're both learning at the exact same time. It is hard. Parenting is the hardest job that there is. And parenting a teenager certainly brings its own unique set of challenges. So give yourself a little bit of grace in that. Just because they're pulling away doesn't mean that they don't love you. So it's really important to remember it can be hard for parents when teens start pulling away to be with their peer group. They need time, space, and freedom to grow up. Try put yourself back into your teenage shoes and what was important and what you wanted. They're going to make mistakes. Them making mistakes does not make you a bad parent. And they're allowed to make mistakes. Conflict is normal. Do not freak out when it happens. They're just trying to become independent. So if we can normalize conflict, then we normalize problem solving and we normalize resolution. And that's really, really helpful life skills for them to have. A messy bedroom will never matter more than your connection to your teenager. I know messy bedrooms are really, really hard to cope with though. But connection is back to the importance of connection. Connection is so, so, so valuable. They really are trying. Sometimes teenagers get a really bad rap, I think. And often they are really trying, but teenage development is really hard. And it's messy. And it's a roller coaster of emotions for them too. So it can be hard to see when they're trying, but they are. You haven't lost them. They will be back. Your relationship with them might be different, but it's different in a good way. So you're now connecting with them on a different level. You're now able to engage with them on a different level. And it's about valuing that now. You need as much support as they do. And that's absolutely okay. And that leads us on to talk a little bit about this. So we've talked about how big the task of parenting is. So parents need and should be encouraged to ask for help from time to time. This is not a sign of failure. It's also not a sign of weakness. It is an indication of the sheer size of the task and your desire to do it well. So that's really, really important. We need to normalize parents asking for help. That no parent should ever feel ashamed of asking for help, whether that's from a family member, whether that is from other parents, whether that's from your child's school, whether that's from the National Parents Association, whether that's from Barnardos, whether it's from other professionals or organizations. We need to normalize asking for help. We need to remember the age-old analogy of it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a teenager. So asking for help is not a sign of failure or weakness. It's an indication of the sheer size of the task that you are trying to do and your desire to do it well. So just before we finish, because we're just coming to the end, just a little reminder, I suppose, just to kind of pull it together and to summarize. And I think this line does it so well. Children need cared for parents as much as they need parents to care for them. So they need us to look after ourselves. They really, really do. So there's, I suppose the picture here is to go with a little bit of an illustration, I suppose. So there was a man working furiously in the woods trying to saw down a tree. He was making very little progress as his saw was blunt and becoming blunter with each stroke. The man was hot and frustrated and continued to work harder and harder. A friend noticed what was going on and asked him, "Why don't you stop for a few minutes so you can sharpen your saw?" "Don't you see," replied the man, "I am too busy sawing to take any time off." So there's a famous life coach, Stephen Covey, and he uses this story to illustrate the futility of working non-stop and the importance of parents taking time off to renew themselves or to refill themselves or to sharpen their saw. So parents should take time to look after their own needs as well as attending to the needs of their children. When parents' own needs for care, comfort, and fulfillment are met, you are then freed up to attend fully to your role of parenting. So when your needs are met, you are then able to attend fully to your parenting role as well. I mentioned back at the beginning that I was going to share some further supports with you. If you feel like there is something extra that you need, if you're struggling, if you feel that your parent needs support or advice or information, Barnardos do have a daily parent support line. The number is here. Don't panic. All of the information that's on this slide is going to be shared with you in a parent's tip sheet, along with some of the information out of the presentation. You will also get a recording of the presentation. We know that it's not easy to take in all of the information in this short space of time. So you will get a video recording of the presentation as well to look back over if that might be helpful. And in the tip sheet, there will also be some other additional resources that may be useful for you. Please keep an eye on the ETB Schools National Parents Association social media for any other upcoming events that they might have. When we get to the end of the webinar after the next slide, the webinar will end quite quickly. And the reason it does that is because you will be directed into a very quick survey. And that survey allows you to give us feedback on the webinar this evening. All feedback will be really, really appreciated and really, really helpful to allow us to design and deliver further webinars. So I'd really appreciate if you could do that. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time out of this sunny evening to join me for the webinar this evening. I hope you found it helpful and I hope you're going away with some thoughts in mind of how you can increase self-care in your own life. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.